Ladies and gentlemen, hit subscribe to this channel right now. I have been telling you for several years that Biden was going to eventually be replaced. Democrats were not going to go into 24. I told you there would be a unanimous Supreme Court decision overturning the absurd Colorado ban. I told you he would get immunity. I'm telling you now that he's going to get a massive victory, overturning an unconstitutional guilty verdict in New York with the hush money. A state cannot level a federal statute, and in this case it's non-existent. They haven't let anyone know what the federal statute is. A state cannot level a federal statute at anyone without the federal government, Department of Justice, and in this case the FEC, the FEC, I'm reading, the FEC involved. Hit subscribe. In a couple of seconds, you will hear Trump's lawyers. You will hear all the information about the Democratic Party imploding real time. This, ladies and gentlemen, is by design. I was the biggest Bernie Sanders booster on the internet, according to the Huffington Post in 2015 and 2016. I was the unofficial scribe of Sanders' most hardcore voters, according to the Washington Post. You can look at those articles on hagoodman.com. During Trump's presidency, early on, I said he was a great president. Look at the economy. We had record highs in household median income, record low in poverty. He was a great president. He brought Americans home from never-ending military conflict. That's exactly what I thought Bernie Sanders would do. But he was railroaded in a theatrical performance called the DNC primary. They actually had a primary, another theatrical performance this year. Let's get to one of Trump's top lawyers explaining that the current vice president will not be enough to replace Biden.
Television, that Joe Biden simply isn't up to the job. And obviously the Democrats are freaking out about that. As you mentioned, there are very serious legal and political obstacles to just swapping out a presidential candidate. You will have issues with ballot access in a number of states, including swing states like Wisconsin. You also have issues with the DNC rules. There's really nothing they can do to force Joe Biden out of this race. That's a decision that Joe Biden himself has to make. And as we've seen in news reports over the last couple days, Biden, at least for now, seems intent on staying in, and his family seem intent on encouraging him to stay in. If that dynamic remains, you could easily see the Democrat Party really torn asunder here, with Democrat kingmakers attempting to pressure Biden out, with Biden and his core loyalists fighting them. If that dynamic exists by the time they get to convention, if there are efforts to shift the convention rules to, for example, unpledged delegates, to allow delegates to vote for a candidate other than Biden, that could spiral into a series of legal challenges that could really threaten the existence of the Democrat Party and its viability on the ballot.
I love Will Scharf. I think he was a fantastic lawyer for attorney for Trump. He was very successful, awesome, knows more about the law, of course, than I do, but I'll just say this. I respectfully disagree in that the Democrats don't have a functioning primary. They have a political machine. Everything they do, we saw this in 2016, is performance art. There are no rules. They were taken to court, and the lawyers for the DNC actually stated, we don't even have to have a primary. We can have a primary and then pick whomever we want in smoke-filled back rooms. Everything that you see is smoke and mirrors. It's basically the entire Democratic Party. It's like pulling the curtain and saying, okay, it's all about a political machine, like Tammany Hall from the 1800s and early 1900s. All they need to do is get journalists, loyal journalists, like we saw in the DNC and Clinton campaign emails years back. There are loyal journalists who will then say, hey, Biden needs to step down. All of his advisors will tell him to step down. He steps down this week, next week. It's going to happen. We saw that with the debate was by design. Everything there was by design. They wanted America to see that our president is one fry short of a Happy Meal. The lights are on, but nobody's home. Very simple. You have all of these articles written now. Democrats govern through peer pressure, public relations, media, and their public relations monstrosity was leveled against Biden. It took about less than a day. And this is, of course, the most popular candidate of all time. Maybe Trump. Maybe there was something to what Trump was saying 4 years ago, but they don't have any rules. They completely cheated Bernie Sanders. They railroaded him, and then Debbie Wasserman Schultz resigned and then joined Clinton's campaign. They're the ones who got caught with campaign finance violations, and they were fined by the FEC. Trump was not fined by the FEC, but of course he was convicted of a campaign finance violation. But anyway, he steps down. Vice President Harris momentarily takes over as president. She decides not to run because of, whatever. The Democrats work in mysterious ways. So it's like, who knows exactly how they're doing it, whether it's public relations or loyalists of the Clintons. The point is Hillary Clinton eventually, somehow, some way will face Trump. If they have to, if they have to, they'll do whatever they need to do. It'll be Hillary Clinton, Trump, 2024.
Both at the presidential level and in lower elections as well. It's a real problem for them.
And no doubt. So obviously, yes, it's no surprise. They knew this was obviously the candidate they were running, despite what they knew behind the scenes. They continue to do so. So it's a problem of their own making, as you articulately just laid out for us. If you are, and obviously you're in the Trump campaign, the polls are rising for Donald Trump every day. The donors are dropping for Biden, and Trump continues on. It looks like even if it...
I was telling you for months and months now, he'll win in a landslide. And this was before the debate. And I said, he's only going to go up in the polls, even if he gets convicted. And look what's taking place. So there's nothing stopping Trump. There's literally nothing they can do to stop Trump. Now it's just a matter of if they can regain some kind of political momentum with a new candidate. I think it has to be Hillary Clinton. It can't be. I don't think Hillary or Bill or the Democratic Party will allow anyone else. Whitmer, Newsom, nobody has the national appeal. Nobody can raise as much money. Nobody can withstand media like the Clintons. Private servers with top secret intelligence on them is illegal. It's impossible from a cybersecurity perspective to transfer classified data onto servers. And Clinton did not have the power to declassify. Trump did. What they're doing with Trump is that they went after Trump for doing exactly what every other president has done. And then they let Clinton and Biden, who did infinitely worse, off the hook. They did not have a power to declassify. A president does. A senator and a secretary of state do not. Furthermore, classified data in your garage and on servers, big problem. Far more egregious than a former president who stated he declassified everything.
If it were to be Kamala, okay? Like, let's say Joe Biden steps out, and even right now, some say he needs to resign right now, Will. It doesn't look like she would fare any better as well. So this is obviously a lot of things in play over the next few days here. But I guess what it comes down to is, Donald Trump is sitting well after a presidential immunity ruling that goes in his favor this week. There's all sorts of, basically the lawfare is over and the Democrats are imploding. And he can just sit back now and campaign on this, despite what the Democrats are going to try to do is up their ante and attacks on him, no doubt.
Yeah, the Democrats had one card to play, and that was this campaign of lawfare. I think that they knew that they cannot beat President Trump at the ballot box, and that's why they unfurled this entire campaign of lawfare, which is now imploding in their faces. If they want to swap Kamala out, or if they want to swap Biden out and put Kamala on the ballot, well, then let's ask the question. She was the one who was entrusted with border security by Joe Biden. She's abjectly failed. At every stage in her career, she has abjectly failed to lead. And if the dynamic at the ballot box next November is President Trump, one of our most successful presidents in recent history, maybe in American history, versus Kamala Harris, who's an absolute joke and one of the least popular politicians in America, I mean, we're talking about a landslide on the order of 1984, 1972. I mean, states that have never been in play in modern history are going to come in play. The Democrats are imploding because this terrible situation that they've created.
Can you imagine if Minnesota, and I think Minnesota, Wisconsin will go Trump. Can you imagine the indignation from the morally superior, highly educated Democrats will be seen throughout the universe, will be heard felt throughout the universe?
For themselves is now blowing up in their faces. And I, for one, I'm sitting here with popcorn just watching it with glee.
Yeah, and we're watching Karine Jean-Pierre coming out and still trying to say it was a cold, getting very testy about it. And, Will, what do you make of the images coming out from Hunter Biden right there, huddled up with his dad? He is obviously a crackhead, convicted felon now, and he's running part of these, inner circle conversations with the sitting president. Does that?
When you're asking Hunter for advice, you got problems.
Obviously, an optics there that I think a lot of Americans may not like as well, especially with the alleged influence peddling in this family, tens of millions of dollars to Hunter and other relatives of the sitting president.
Yeah, I mean, Joe Biden has long said that Hunter is supposedly the smartest guy that he knows, and I think that says a lot about Joe Biden. I mean, you look at the end of Saddam Hussein's regime in Iraq, and he too hugged his children close and began to rely on them increasingly as his advisors became politically unreliable. What we're seeing here now is a Democrat feeding frenzy where a lot of longtime Biden loyalists are turning on him. There have been rumors that the Obamas and the Clintons are starting to turn on Joe Biden. So Biden is relying on the few people that he knows he can absolutely trust.
Again, I love Will Scharf. I think he's brilliant. I just respectfully disagree. He's giving Democrats too much credit. Look at what they did to Bernie Sanders in 2016. They cheated Bernie Sanders. Then they got Bernie Sanders to say, Vladimir, I don't want your help. You're helping me. The Ruskies and the Kremlins are helping me. I don't want your help. And then they come out with stupid intel reports that say, actually, the Kremlin wanted Bernie Sanders too. And they'll believe anything. You're talking about people who pride themselves, liberal Democrats, many of whom are absolutely wonderful people. They're great, fantastic. But a great many are extremely intelligent but lack wisdom. They will believe in the most delusional propaganda. And as long as it is presented to them in an eloquent and in an eloquent manner by people they respect, appeals to authority that they respect, they'll believe anything. Trump was a Kremlin operative. The DNC primary was fair and neutral in 2016. Biden is completely fine. Actually, look at Trump. He's drinking water in a weird way. Oh, my God, he's the one with the problem. And they'll believe anything. The cognitive dissonance, they're so used to having everything go their way. But nobody trusts media anymore. The most important arrow in the Democratic Party quiver was media. And nobody trusts media. So now they went after Trump with Lawfare. Didn't work. And now they're just going to have to go head up against it. They blamed him for you know what? More people lost their lives under Biden. They only have their accomplishments, which are pretty much non-existent. So if Democrats are running on their accomplishments and they don't have Kimmel and De Niro and Stephen Colbert and all of Hollywood and social media algorithms, 50 Intel officials saying the laptop wasn't real, top level of government officials saying, oh, there was no intent with servers. If they don't have every conceivable possible advantage, they'll never win. They'll never win. And again, it's like the entire house of cards of just liberal propaganda is coming crashing down. Everyone sees that they've been lied to. And I saw this when I was on the left. I was on the left up until about 7 years ago. I saw this. My whole life I was a Democrat. The Democrats of today are not the Democrats of the late 80s or even the early 90s. They're very, very different. They govern only through public relations, and we can go on forever. They have no problem, like, for example, with Bernie Sanders cheating him.
Close family members and a tight circle of longtime advisors. To me, that speaks to the desperate weakness of Joe Biden, both politically and in the White House.
So we've known about this, ladies and gentlemen. I love RFK Jr., just not this year, but I think he's fantastic. I really do. I think that Tulsi Gabbard is amazing. RFK Jr. is amazing. These are people that I respect. I'm conservative on most things nowadays, especially Second Amendment. But you know what? Being conservative now on foreign policy or populist Republican on foreign policy means you want Americans home. You don't want them sent to never-ending military conflict. That used to be a liberal vantage point. I thought that was a liberal vantage. Anyway, the point is, I look at people who aren't sheep, who don't care about groupthink. I want a human being, not an artificial intelligence robot. Democrats and never Trump Republicans are AI robots that focus on meaningless sensibilities while they send Americans to never-ending military conflict, and focus on accusing Trump of things he never said, fabricating quotes. And then they talk about decorum as they're lying and deceiving people about things that Trump never said. Anyway, let's continue.
Very much for that, Jackie Heinrich. This just in, too, from the Boston Globe. Its editorial board now, the latest newspaper to say maybe it's time for the president to at least suspend his campaign. Other major newspapers, including the New York Times and the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, have said for him to end it outright and open it up to an open convention.
It's called groupthink. The Clintons didn't write a letter to each of these editors at these publications. All the Washington Post and New York Times started the ball rolling, and Democrats gravitate towards groupthink. They don't want to be the one person who says, nah, I'm not voting for Clinton in 2016. That person is excommunicated. They committed blasphemy. That's what happened to me. And I realized, wow, they don't really care about winning, or no, they don't care about their alleged value system, which there's issues. There's a whole lot of issues there as well. Okay, that's why I left that, terrible world. But anyway, the point is, they run on groupthink. You just need the Washington Post, New York Times, CNN, MSNBC to say something. 50 other newspapers and publications, The Atlantic, they'll all agree. It's just groupthink, ladies and gentlemen. It's not like they're coming to this conclusion on their own. We all saw Biden for 4 years. They're the ones living in a delusional bubble. And they're claiming to have just realized their mistake. It's like, no. The whole thing was a theatrical performance. They're just changing actors, or they're changing... They're replacing somebody that they can't win with in 24 with somebody they think they can win with, or somebody who's taking power. I think it'll be Hillary Clinton, Trump 2024.
Reaction now from Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the independent presidential candidate. Robert, that's not too far from your original neck of the woods, Boston. Yet another paper saying it's time to call it a day. What do you make of all of this?
I think, what happened the other night at the debate was that a lot of Americans finally understood what the media has been hiding, what people around in the White House has been hiding, which is the executive of our country is probably not running our country, that he has cognitive issues that are going to impair him. And, what I think we all need to worry about is the scenario where he gets the wake-up call at 3 o'clock in the morning and has to be pushed down the corridor and make that decision within 6 minutes. That's going to affect all of humanity. And, we deserve and we need, we're the most powerful country in the world. We need a president who's on his feet 24 hours a day. Now, the White House, what Kareem said, or Jean-Pierre said, was that he had a bad 90 minutes, and which is, anybody can have a bad 90 minutes. But if that's true, then
That's like saying the Titanic had a bad 90 minutes. That Democrats, again, they live in a delusional state. And then they say Trump lies. Nobody tells the truth more than Trump. They just don't like what he says. He engages in hyperbolic speech, and then they say it's a lie. Then they actually lie overtly, engage only in hyperbolic speech, and they don't consider it a lie. If you judge Trump with the standard they judge Democrats, he is the most honest politician. But anyway, let's continue.
He needs to dispel that very aggressively, not just with a single interview on CBS to a very, very friendly reporter, George Stephanopoulos, by coming out and doing unscripted events without teleprompters, talking to voters, doing town halls, doing debates with people who are going to challenge him so that Americans can actually assess whether he's capable of running the country. His insistence that he's okay and the insistence of this close coterie that surrounds him and his personal doctor should not be convincing to anybody. He needs to.
Is it convincing to your family, Robert? Is it convincing to your family? Overwhelmingly, your fellow family members, your sisters and brothers, and extended family are supporting Joe Biden. If he steps out of the race, is it possible that they throw their support behind you?
I don't know. I haven't talked to them about it. I know, the only thing the only feedback I've got is, and I'm going to be at the Cape next weekend with a lot of them. But on the family listserv, people were very, very disturbed. The most adamant supporters of Biden in my family are, were saying this is using the word embarrassing, and how
none of them knew that he had these issues before, Robert.
Democrats and media just 2 weeks ago were saying that edited clips of Biden were deceiving. They say that Trump lies. The reality is that he's far more truthful than Biden, Obama, Clinton, media, far more transparent. If you had the actual Mueller probe leveled at the Clintons or the Bidens or the Democratic Party, you would actually get convictions not based on misdemeanors that are elevated to felonies that will be overturned, like in the hush money case. You'll actually get, in the case of Biden's laptop, for example, serious bribery and graft statutes that are almost certainly broken. But let's continue.
Is this all a surprise to them that we've seen signs of this before? Do you think they were that well hidden from even, your own family members who presumably are quite close to the president?
Well, I mean, they're close to the president, meaning that they like him. They don't spend a lot of time with him nowadays since he was elected president. So, and I think, for me, I was watching his performance on, all these other debates, which are recycled, all of the gaffes that he was making, and the falls and the blank stares that are circulated on YouTube and then sent to my phone. I don't know if the algorithms send them to their phones, so I don't know what they were seeing and what they weren't seeing. But, because of the kind of things that I look at YouTube, I was getting a lot of those, and it was really obvious to me that there was a problem. But I suppose you could live in a universe where none of that stuff becomes visible to you, and I don't know where they're living. And incidentally,
Democrats live in a universe that is run by groupthink and media, overwhelming media narrative. So if they say it's a fair and neutral primary, and Bernie Sanders is obviously being cheated, they'll still continue even after Debbie Wasserman Schultz resigns from the DNC in 2016, promptly joins Clinton's campaign because the emails showed that Bernie Sanders was railroaded. Still, they'll believe they have a functioning primary. They'll accuse Trump of being Kremlin operative, years of a Mueller probe investigation, millions of documents, testimony. They'll still believe that Trump was influenced by the Kremlin. Inflation, interest rates are paying double for a mortgage under Biden. More people lost their lives of you-know-what under Biden's first year. They'll still believe that the economy is great, and even though he flooded the country full of strategic petroleum reserves, and there's chaos and mayhem throughout the world, they'll still believe he's better. They will. They live. You have to understand, liberal Democrats, very good people. They live in a delusional bubble where if they don't go to bed every night with Kimmel and Colbert, trying desperately to disparage Trump, waking up in the morning, reading the New York Times and Washington Post, talking about how Trump is a menace to democracy, and then watching The View, and then De Niro, and then Hollywood celebrities, and then their friends at get-togethers railing on Trump. They don't have any friends who are Trump supporters because they've purged anyone who disagrees with them. They live in an echo chamber, a bubble. And they just found out the other day, many just found out that, Biden is not he's one fry short of a Happy Meal. Oh, wow. But everyone throughout the planet saw this. But Democrats actually do live in this type of delusional state. They're so arrogant and used to getting exactly what they want at all times because they control the overwhelming influence within media.
There are a lot of family members who are supporting my campaign, but the ones who are close in my family, which is the children of Robert Kennedy, there's a bunch of them who are working for the administration or who are very close to the president.
And I meant no disrespect to you, Robert, by saying that. I do want to get your thoughts, though, on this push now to say this president should do what Lyndon Johnson did and step down, that it was the right thing to do. Of course, that was 1968. He faced...
By the way, Biden won a primary, just to let everybody know how worthless the Democratic primary is. He won his primary, by the way, okay?
Inevitable defeat. He bowed out of the race. Soon after that, Eugene McCarthy, who was already campaigning, your father joined the race. We all sadly remember what happened. But the ticket did go down to defeat regardless. The party that controlled the White House lost the White House. It always happens when a party is in disarray. Are Democrats in disarray and bound to lose the White House regardless?
Design.
Well, I mean, the polls indicate that President Biden will lose under any conditions. But I don't, listen, the cognitive issues that became very apparent during that debate to everybody. I don't think anybody will say that those things are bound to get better over the next 4 years.
This is why RFK Jr. is a wonderful human being, very intelligent, man of principle. There are Democrats, still pundits with million sub-channels, still saying that Biden is just fine and you're not a neurologist, so what do you know? They twist themselves into pretzels trying to defend the indefensible. But they live in a delusional state. That's just the way it is. Because when you've turned the word democracy into a euphemism for whatever is good for the Democratic Party and liberal ideology, obviously you're willing to, you'll vote for a house cat, a fern, a laptop. Well, bad choice of words for Biden, but you'll vote for an inanimate object. You'll vote for an empty chair as opposed to a President Trump with a great economy, great foreign policy. Okay, Democrats will experience a much better economy, much better foreign policy, and they'll be miserable throughout every second of Trump's presidency because they only care about political power. They don't care about what's good. Many, I don't say all, but many don't really care about what's good for the country. If Biden was a great president, even though I disagree with if he was an objectively good president, I'd vote for him. He wasn't.
And we're electing a president for 4 years. So, I think it's kind of crazy to not give somebody who is in better shape a chance to lead the Democratic Party and ultimately run the country. We need somebody who is mentally competent, cognitively competent, at this critical time in history when we're, on the brink of nuclear war with Russia, when we have a $34 trillion debt that's going to implode, where we have the rise of BRICS, which is
We're on the brink of a nuclear confrontation directly because of democratic foreign policy. Other countries are joining together in economic and military alliances because of Biden's foreign policy. These things didn't happen with Trump. We were not talking about nuclear confrontation or annihilation with Trump. For a second, Democrats were hyperventilating about Kim Jong-un, and then Trump met him. And then, of course, they just said nothing about it. They said, oh, it was a photo op. And prior to the photo op, they were hysterical about, oh my God, the end of the world. Oh, Trump and his words, and he's so mean. And they thought that Trump's Twitter account was going to get us into a nuclear confrontation, and they've completely ignored a dreadful foreign policy. It's about political power and influence. That's all Democrats care about.
Is threatening the dollar is the world reserve currency, where we have, the record inflation since the 1970s. We're the first generation of kids who can't get into homes. We need somebody up there who's dynamic, who has a vision, who's going to change the direction, the course of this country. And I don't think anybody in the country really believes that is going to come from President Biden.
Do you regret then leaving the Democratic Party because this might be an opening? Marianne Williamson, a former candidate, seems to be back in as a candidate.
They will Bernie Sanders, Marianne Williamson. They already did. Okay. And it's like RFK Jr. is too much of an independent, thoughtful man of integrity for the Democrats to actually rally around. They don't like him because he doesn't adhere to groupthink, and he doesn't worship a fabricated consensus of experts that only agree with what the Democratic Party agrees with. Any expert that disagrees with their fabricated consensus is, again, committed blasphemy, excommunicated, should never have been born. So Democrats, their propaganda is very overt and transparent, easy to understand. They want somebody who's compliant, or in the case of Hillary Clinton, she and Bill are far more, influential than most Democratic candidates. But the Democrats want somebody that will walk in lockstep with their ideology, which is, by the way, changing at all times. Okay. And they utilize AOC and Bernie Sanders to funnel left-leaning votes back into a machine. They have zero intention of a Green New Deal or Medicare for all. Notice that they're not talking about any of these things now.
Just in case, do you think you sort of ostracized yourself by becoming an independent candidate and not getting a chance to take advantage of this?
I don't think that I had any choice. And, the delegates have all been assigned, and that system was, I would use the word rigged to make sure that only President Biden could get elected. So I think
that could be gone now, right, Robert? That could be gone,
and
and now they're going to have presumably an open convention if it comes to that. And you're quite right. We don't know.
The Democrats' open convention is about as open as the end of a Rocky movie, or you're not going to bet. Nobody's going to bet you, gee, you think Rocky will win? It's like, yeah, see, you really have a gambling issue if you're betting on, the end of a Rocky movie. Yeah, Rocky wins, buddy. Watch the movie. I love Rocky, by the way. I love Stallone. But the thing is, Democrats, everything is scripted. There's no difference between a Democratic primary and a theatrical performance, a movie. Everything is scripted. They claim to have rules. It has nothing to do with meritocracy. It's a political machine based on political influence within the machine, just like Tammany Hall. The couple with the most influence is President Obama and the former First Lady, and Bill and Hillary Clinton. Those are the four people with the most power and influence, money, generating capabilities within the political party. This isn't rocket science. It all revolves around what those 4 individuals want. That's it. It's not the completely delusional belief that Democrats are functioning the way most people function is sad and hilarious. They've decided on the earliest debate ever for a reason, because they wanted all of this to happen. And I think it'll be Hillary Trump 2024.
No, yet. But if it comes to that, you could have been in the thick of it.
But the delegates are all beholden to Biden, to President Biden. So, and most of those delegates are selected. The super delegates are selected by the big donors to the donor class, to the Democratic Party. And I think that within that donor class, which is BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, the pharmaceutical companies, the military-industrial complex, and the oil and coal companies, that's who controls the convention, and I don't think that they're going to want to see me. I think I threaten. I'm a multi-trillion-dollar threat to those interests.
So
and
why aren't you benefiting more from this news? I mean, obviously Donald Trump has opened up a wider lead versus Joe Biden in these latest polls that are coming out for the New York Times, Siena College, or what have you, scoring big with independents and the like. Not you. What is that about?
I think a couple things. First of all, I do benefit if you look at favorability. I have better favorability ratings than either President Biden, President Trump. And I'll say this, Neil, that a lot of the polls discount independents. I'm beating President Biden and President Trump among independents. So the Gallup poll that came out 3 days ago showed that 51% of Americans are now independents. But if you look at the polls, the way that they weight those polls, some of them only give 20% to independents. Today, 23%, according to the Gallup poll, 23% of Americans say they're Democrat, 25% Republican, and between 51 and 52% independent. So I'm beating them in that cohort, and my
but you got to get on more ballots, right? You got to get on more ballots. I count.
I love RFK. He's awesome. But let's say they're 50 or 55% independent, but then there's independent leaning liberal, independent leaning conservative. And RFK gets a little bit of both. So
states that you're on now, you were optimistic about getting on all 50. I don't have the latest figures available, so I apologize. Where do you stand in that?
So there's a mutiny, and like I said, the Supreme Court will overturn an unconstitutional guilty verdict. A state cannot level a hush money campaign finance violation without the Federal Election Commission involved. That can't happen. Okay, the FEC dropped the case. The FEC actually fined Clinton and the DNC for purchasing a Steele dossier, which was probably a biography of Bill or Hunter, who knows. But the point is, they're the ones who committed a campaign finance violation, not Trump. Anyway, they're going to replace Biden very soon. I've been saying that. If you've watched this channel for about a year and a half, I've been saying that all the time. But let's continue.
That was CNN political analyst Carl Bernstein reporting concerns about President Biden have been growing inside the White House over the past 6 months. 2 congressional Democrats now calling for President Biden to drop out of the 2024 race. Jared Golden of Maine and Lloyd Doggett of Texas. A new report from Reuters claims there could be at least 25 Democrats who call for Biden to step aside if he seems shaky, and that could be happening in the next few days. South Carolina Congressman James Clyburn, a strong Biden ally, now saying he would support Vice President Kamala Harris if the president does drop out. However, Harris says that Joe Biden is their nominee, and she's proud to be his running mate. But even former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi is admitting concerns about Biden's health are legitimate.
All of this is taking place by design. Look, Bernie Sanders was cheated in 2016. Biden will, in a very bizarre way, be treated the same manner. In a very bizarre way. They don't have a functioning primary. It's a theatrical performance. It's performance art. It's completely scripted. And they're used to just lying to people and then saying, oh, Trump lies. You couldn't find people who deceive more than the wonderful, morally superior, highly educated liberal Democrats in the Democratic Party.
I want to bring in Texas Congressman Randy Weber. He's a member of the House Energy, Commerce, Science, Space, and Technology Committees. Congressman, good morning.
Good morning, Cheryl.
What are you hearing from your colleagues on the other side of the aisle and frankly, the state of disarray that we are seeing right now in Washington?
Well, of course, you're hearing the same thing we're hearing, and I'm actually seeing more than I'm hearing. When you see them huddled together, when you see all the unbelievable, well, I should say the unbelievable disbelief that the liberal media has come out with since that unbelievable, if you want to call it a performance, it's only a matter of time, my opinion, before they will seek to replace him because they can't afford to put him forward. If he's this way now, Cheryl, how's he going to last another 2, 3, 4 years? It's not practical.
Well, and that is what you mentioned, the liberal media. Washington Post headline, brand new editorial, Joe Biden should step aside now. This is the Washington Post. Another Washington Post article. Harris is no riskier for Democrats than Biden, because now what we're seeing in these polls, 538 in particular, is showing that President Biden's approval rating is now lower than Kamala Harris's, Congressman. My question to you as a Republican, though, if you're the Republicans, don't you want Joe Biden to stay in the...
At this point, tooth decay is more popular than either Biden or Harris, which says something about the Democratic Party.
Race?
Well, of course we do. We believe that given what's been happening in our country with an open border, with inflation, with their war on energy, with I don't know what the final count is or what the current count is, sadly, 4 or 5 women who have been raped, tortured, murdered, some killed, of course, by illegals who aren't even supposed to be here. And yet Biden the whole time did nothing for the border, and the border.
Democrats say, oh, Second Amendment control. Yeah, you got to control. And then they say, oh, this wouldn't have happened had you simply controlled the inanimate object. But then when you make that same argument, hey, that individual should never have been in this location to begin with. Oh, how dare you? You can use the argument that they use against the Second Amendment against them on this terrible, terrible situation we have in our country.
Czar, Kamala Harris, quote unquote, did nothing for the border. I think people are paying attention, and they will not want the Democrats back in power.
Well, you know, and the Wall Street Journal writes that right now that it's to your point that Joe Biden's issues, it's not his infirmity. It really is Afghanistan. It is inflation. It is the border crisis, his handling of the wars in Ukraine and Israel. I want to bring in my colleague here. She's got a question for you. Go ahead.
Congressman, politics aside, Joe Biden at least has 6 months left of his presidency. Are you concerned for the national security of the country in those 6 months?
Well, yes, ma'am, I am, because as I already alluded to,
Democrats, unfortunately, have no concept of national security. Their only emphasis is on political ideology. So, for example, in the southern geographic region of our country, God bless the majority. Good people, fine, amazing human beings. Okay, but that's not the point. The point is you have a system. Every country every country has a system where you ensure that a person who has committed crimes doesn't get to become part of where you live. Okay, I'm speaking in algorithmically friendly manner. That doesn't mean that you're bigoted. That just means that, or that you have prejudice. It means that there is a system in place to protect your country from, God forbid, individuals who might want to do harm to citizens, to the government. Okay, Democrats have completely done away with that under the guise of being compassionate. That, unfortunately, is a whole can of worms that Biden and Democrats have opened up. Everybody knows that you need to enforce at least a certain amount of laws to protect your country. Even liberal Democrats agree with this, or some agree with this. So anyway, the point is there are serious national security considerations. The fact that we're talking about nuclear confrontation is a major national security issue. Okay, but see, again, Democrats govern through public relations. They don't govern through any specific ideology other than groupthink, public relations, and maybe some core principles of liberal ideology. But they don't they're the ones who are more militant now. They're the ones who completely ignore crime, even homelessness within major cities. You ask, well, why don't they address the issue? And then the rebuttal from the morally superiors, well, what would you do? It's like, well, you're the one running the state. You're the one who should have come up with solutions to these major problems that started over a decade ago and got worse when you shut down economic activity.
Congressman Burgess Owens. Congressman, good to see you. You would think if you were Joe Biden and you were the White House and you were trying to control this guy to get him through this weekend because his presidency literally depends on it, you wouldn't say ho, ho, ho to an audience on Independence Day, would you?
Well, it's interesting for those of us.
So apparently Biden pretended he was Santa Claus on July 4th, which he's just phoning it in at this point. He's like, whatever, man. It is what it is.
We've been watching this for the last 2-3 years. We're not surprised. We're not shocked at all. I'll just ask this question for the big donors, those millions and millions of people who years ago took the advice of Barack Obama, do not listen only to the liberal media. How does it feel to be lied to? This is something that American people, Black community, has seen this for decades. And now American people see what it is. These guys don't care about our country. They care about the party. They care about the power. And, it's amazing that they're now in shock. They're panicking because American people finally see what's going on. They did not panic when we lost 100,000 people, Americans to fentanyl, to inflation, all the things that's going on right now. You see where the focus is for the Democratic Party. And I'll tell you what, I think this is going to be for the brand, a very disruptive process. Thanks to Biden, American people realize the Democratic Party has never, ever been for American people. And we're seeing it now. They're now talking about changing one elitist with another one. But the party doesn't change. The party does not focus on American people. They focus on their own power. And we're tired of it. We're sick of it.
Right. And certainly the Biden family is all about putting themselves first. And one way of triaging this debacle is the team planned a sit-down interview with ABC's George Stephanopoulos to quiet down the post-debate frenzy. Originally, it was scheduled for Sunday morning. That interview has been moved up to primetime tonight. Congressman, why the urgency here, and what do you expect from this interview?
Well,
Well, if it goes as well as it did with, what's his name? Oh my God. Alec Baldwin. George Stephanopoulos didn't help Alec Baldwin any. So I don't know why you would go to George Stephanopoulos worked in the Clinton White House. Hello, Joe. But then again, this is by design. It's by design. Okay. Now suddenly Biden, the lights are on, but nobody's home. 2 weeks ago, you're editing videos.
What is interesting is how little they think about the American people. They really believe that sitting down with Stephanopoulos is going to change what we're seeing with this president. And you made a point earlier. We're afraid we're afraid of what our enemies are seeing. I mean, obviously, it's cringeworthy. It's embarrassing. Anyone who's had an elder, a parent who's gotten older, is going through dementia, we want to protect them. And to see a president of the United States so weak, we know that we'll have hard times ahead of us. But again, this is a family that does not care about our country. And by the way, I don't think Biden's going to step away. He's obstinate. He's focused on himself. I think he's a narcissist. And because of that, he's going to fight all the way through to the very end. And when the Democrats lose, and we come in to power with President Trump, with the House, the Senate, and we turn this country around, the Democratic Party will never have the power they have, at least for another few generations. I believe. I think this will be a very timely process for us to get this country back.
No, I think you.
And then, unfortunately, we have a stock market crash with a crypto crash on the horizon. And I don't see the Democratic Party. Rob, thank you. Thank you, Rob. I don't see the Democratic Party rebounding anytime soon. I think that for a number of reasons, I agree with the congressman from Utah, Burgess Owens. I think that they're on the ropes, and this is the last version of the Democratic Party that I think from maybe 2006, 2007 till today, you're not going to see that. I think that Hillary, Trump, it'll be the end of the past 15 years of what the Democrats have become. Trump will win. Clinton will write another book, blame another country for losing, and we'll move on. Thank God the country will prosper with Trump. And of course, liberals and media will be miserable every second of the way because it's about political power. It's not about actually prospering and having a better country and a safer and more wealth. It's not about that. But anyway, hit subscribe, people. I will have 2 live streams tomorrow. I know I always say that. I said that about today. I should have a live stream at 3 p.m. Eastern tomorrow. God bless you all. Hit subscribe to this channel, people. Thank you so very, very, very much. If you watch this channel, everything that I have been saying is pretty much taking place. And that's why you watch the channel. We're growing. Tell your friends. If you live in Australia, in the Philippines, in New Zealand, in the UK, Canada, throughout the world, Korea, Nigeria, Nepal, tell your friends about this channel. YouTube loves international viewers, as do I, and I thank you all for watching in the U.S. and around the world. God bless you, everybody. Thank you for your support. If you want to support my work long-term, my Patreon is below. Become a member. Hey, thanks, everybody.